businesses that the reason they have them is because that type of activity, as you're speaking to, would not happen.
Okay, I know that HR, you got letters after your name,
Sure.
like architects and other things, so financial professionals. So I've got to look into that a little further.
We have, Robert just brought up, there are 4 psychiatrists that are on staff or are consultants for HR for the city of Virginia Beach. And I actually never knew that, but so obviously they have referrals or something, and the total consulting fee or salary, however it's termed, is $880,000 of the budget. So somehow these 4 people, I don't know how they're used or not used, you know, we have that in place for the city of Virginia Beach. And I would ask for people to ask questions. This isn't really the forum for stating your positions. Please keep your comments to questions if you would.
Thank you, Melina.
We hear a lot about student debt and the high cost of tuition. What is the Senate doing about that?
So the House and Senate last year froze tuition in the state of Virginia for public institutions. I've been on the bandwagon for tuition for the last 4, maybe 5 years, trying to get the cost down, make it reasonable. When it comes to student debt, it's crazy where we are today. When I went to school, you could work a summer and pretty much cover almost a year of tuition. When Robert went to school, you could work a day and cover your tuition. That's a joke.
It was a very science.
But no, seriously, back on that, the problem is our students, our workforce that's graduating now with student debt, they're graduating with $50,000 to $400,000 in student debt. So what happens is you're less likely to start a business, you're less likely to start a family, you're less likely to buy a house, buy a new car, because you're saddled with all this debt. So we thought it was so important to focus on this issue, stop the tuition increases at 5 to 13% per year. Some universities did it on their own. Others had to be incentivized a little bit. So that is a major issue that we still have a long way to go on. And we've taken a couple of really great steps. We just need to keep going. Okay. Go to read the budget.
Since I had a chance to ask another question, the General Assembly creates these political subdivisions. And long ago, before you were on it, it created the Virginia Beach Development Authority. This is even way back in the 60s. That hasn't worked out too well for us because it's an all-appointed, powerful arm of our government. And we have a lot of problems with these authorities because the entire process through the law by which people are appointed really takes us out of the equation. You get a lot of corruption. I mean, we could go on and on. Right now, you mentioned the legislative package that the city is going to provide to you. And in that package, there is an item asking you to create another set of all appointed authorities called a Community Development Authority, beginning with, under the law, something to fund a project at the oceanfront where the developers are having trouble getting financing. But the way that legislative package is written, it allows that, if it were to be passed, to create and spin up an infinite number of these whenever council may request them, because the state's going to give that authority to the local government, who then appoints a non-appointed body to run up this debt. Councilman Moss recently went on Facebook and explained that there's a lot of problems in the way the laws are written in the accountability for the debt. While they may say it's not going to hold the locality accountable or the state, ultimately someone has to pay that debt should it collapse. So I guess my point to you is, what are your thoughts about creating yet another all-appointed authority that has the power to issue debt to fund economic development?
Okay, so I'm going to kind of rewind and try to address that with a couple of questions and answers to what I saw as multiple questions throughout. The first one, and I believe the city of Virginia Beach, unless it's changed, have elected officials who are liaisons to the development authority. They are our elected representatives who sit on that board and should be held accountable for the actions of those boards. I believe that's the case. I've not looked at it in a number of years, but I believe that's the case. So we do have elected officials we can hold accountable for the actions of that board. If not, I think that would be a great idea and a great idea for a bill moving forward. Secondly, the new authority that you're talking about, Community Development Authority, I've glanced over the city's legislative agenda. I've not dissected it yet. It truly just came out in the last couple of weeks to us. I will have to really dissect that to better understand it. I did not read Councilman Moss's Facebook post. John, if you're still watching, I'm sorry I didn't read your Facebook post on that. I will go back and add that to the things that I read.
Well, John supports it, he just wants a title law.
Okay, I've not read it, so I have to see it.
John supports.
I'm okay with making tighter laws, but if we're setting up an authority that is going to commit the city, the state, or local government to debt, and let's be honest, if they sign on to it, the city has never, even if they're not held responsible, they've never let something fail like that. So we truly are, even though it may not show as part of our debt, we're not going to let it fail. So
No, the taxpayers will pay.
the second part of that is if we've got that going on, then I believe that we need to have elected representatives who are liaisons or sit on that board or that commission or that authority, and we need to hold them accountable, and they need to be responsible for the actions of that authority, because as the liaisons, they're supposed to be liaisons between council and that organization or that authority. And as that liaison, they should be bringing back information to council and getting council action or direction on it. If they're not, and they're making unilateral decisions, then they still need to be held accountable. But if they're the ones who are on that authority or responsible for that authority, they need to be held accountable for the actions of
So I guess I just would say, what we have is not working, it's a fact.
Okay.
We need to revisit this, and maybe there's no accountability or any penalty or whatever. This is failing, and we need to fix this. And instead of creating more of them, I would prefer that we abolish the ones we have and go back to letting our local elected city council make these decisions instead of an all-appointed body. I understand, but it's the General Assembly that creates these things, not the local government. And that's the only reason I brought it up to you, is it's a problem.
the General Assembly did create that. I don't remember the year.
It was in the 60s.
Oh, in the 60s. I need to look into that a little more and get a better feel for it, but I need to also see what's in the legislative package about this, really dig into it, because it just came out and I've not had the chance to, other than a quick glance through it. I know there's one other bud back here. Okay.
Go back to tuition issue again. Correct me if I'm incorrect. Prior to, not very long ago, student debt was financed within the public sector, if you will. I don't know. And as I understand, under the Obama administration, they stopped that, and it all goes to the federal government. And my understanding of that happened. Now all these institutions are spending huge amounts of money, all kinds of, they got funding that federal government's permitted to have to tuition loans. I probably have it fuddled up a little bit, but if that's incorrect, if that's correct, what's going on, I wonder if there's a way of fixing that.
Okay. I think that I'm not the subject matter expert on the federal tuition laws. Unfortunately, that's just not one of the areas I'm very familiar with, but as I understand it, your question is, did the federal government come in and buy up all the student debt under the Obama administration? I'm not aware of that. I can't quite answer that. I'm sure somebody else in the room is probably more of a subject matter expert than I am. Certainly something I can look into to find out, but that's not one of the things I'm on top of. Laura?
I can address that a little bit.
Please.
I can tell you, I graduated high school in 1982. In 1982, a full year at Virginia Tech, dorms, meal plan, everything was $2,400. Around about the 90s, mid to late 90s, the government got heavily involved in student loans, as you've seen with healthcare and many other things. As soon as the government gets involved, everything skyrockets because nobody cares what the government pays for it. I mean, my first student loan I took out as an adult was through Signet Bank. My tuition was quite low, and now I have student loans through the government, and I won't live long enough to pay them off. So
Wow.
I don't think it's illegal for them to do it because I do still get offers from the credit union, but it's easier to get one through the government, and they're exorbitant.
Just to add a little bit to that, I read an article probably about 6 months ago about that, and what the article was trying to point out was that people were having a hard time affording getting into these schools, and the schools were looking to try to raise tuitions, and they couldn't because the students or potential students couldn't afford it. And they came up with this student loan program that was deferred for years. And so as you're going into school, you don't see the loan. You don't see the loan for years and years and years down the road. And the schools were saying, oh, this is great. We can raise the tuition as high as we want because the people are not going to see the loans for years. And that's why the student loan came in. The article was pointing out that's how student loan came into being, and that's why universities and colleges can raise the tuition so high.
Okay. I was not aware of it. It makes logical sense that that may have what happened. Is there another question back here? Now, if I remember the chairwoman when she was up here.
She was up there and she forgot.
I was up there, I wasn't down there.
What's your position on universal background checks?
On universal background checks, I honestly think we should do a background check on everybody who's buying a gun. I think we need to do everything we can to keep guns on the hands of felons. I do. I just think we need to do a much better job. So.
I wonder how many convicts are going to apply for that, still get it done.
With the 22,000 people that have the restoration of their voting rights. I don't know if it was a complete all rights. I think it was just voting rights. Our previous governor did.
It's basically their civil rights, voting, serve on a jury, be a notary public, run for office. Second Amendment right restoration still has to go through the same process it's always had to go through, where you have to go to court with a lawyer and get that route.
There you go. So one of our subject matter experts back there. Thank you for that.
Quick follow-up, who can sell a gun without a background check?
Today,
Yeah.
I can sell one to
you can sell a
my
personal
son,
gun
my
to
husband, you.
the young lady right next to you without a background check. I think that
But if it's registered to him and he sells it to me, and then I don't register it, and I commit a crime with it, like that's,
he legally sold it to you, and you committed a crime, so you should go to jail. And with my last set of bills, since you used a weapon in the commission of your crime, you'll spend a lot more time in jail.
don't plan on doing it.
I think you look great in red. I don't think you look good. Okay, Marlene.
I have an unpopular question. What's your feelings on bump stocks and AK-15s in the general public?
Okay, so bump stocks are illegal. They're illegal at the federal level. They've been illegal at the federal level for, I don't know, it's been a while. I want to say sometime last year, the year before, December of either 17 or 18, there was, the president said bump stocks are illegal. They went all the way down through ATF. So that was your first question. What's my feeling of that? Any modification to a trigger mechanism is illegal under ATF regulations. If you are the cycle of a trigger releases more than one bullet. There's multiple ways to do that. I would never get engaged, involved, sell, advocate any of that. And then Oh,
You mean an A?
AK-47. Okay, so AK-47s, I just read an FBI study that said more people are killed by hammers and blunt instruments than assault weapons, maybe assault weapons, rifles, shotguns, and they had something else in there. But more people are, I can dig that, it's an FBI study that was just put out. And they said more people are killed with hammers and blunt objects.
Senator DeSteph, just a slight correction. Anytime you commit harm on another human being, it's an assault weapon, whether it's a hammer, chainsaw, whatever.
Perfect. You're absolutely correct. Anytime you create harm, and your car can be used as an assault weapon as well.
What's your position on red flag laws in terms of the due process?
Okay, so I've read 4 or 5 different bills on red flag laws. They are from one that said, if I looked at you and said, hey, you're unstable, they would go take your guns away, they would take everything away, you'd have to get a mental evaluation. And if I was upset at you because you're my neighbor and your trash fell over my yard or whatever, I could do that and there would be no retribution to me. So I've seen them from that level all the way to if you did it and you were upset at somebody, like Reed was upset at Diana over here, that Reed just said, hey, Diana's unstable, we need to take away any weapon, any access to anything, and she needs to put in a mental institution. And Reed, if he falsely accused that, would go to jail. So I've seen them, I've read them on the complete broad spectrum. So it's like every other piece of legislation, I want to read the details before I tell you I support or don't support that. But you've got to get it from this down to one narrow piece of legislation. That would be like me saying, I support a doctor being able to give birth to a baby. Okay? I think that's great if it's no OB/GYN. If it's a chiropractor doctor, probably not. If it's a veterinarian, well, it depends on how good the vet is. I don't know. But you can't go with a broad term and say, yes, I'm for that, or yes, I'm against that broad term. I've got to read the specific bill, and I think that reading the specific bill is what you would expect when you elect me to office. So when I come down, like on the puppy bill, it's easy to say Bill hates puppies because he voted against this bill, but when you read the bill and it says, well, you're breeding dogs in the back of a pet shop in a cage and that's their entire life, and then you're selling those puppies up front, no, that's inhumane. I'm never going to support that. But it's called the puppy bill. Okay? You got to see the detailed, specific bill and a lot of times the little summary or the title of the bill is not what the bill does because it's been rewritten 6 times before it's truly voted on for that final vote. That's why you've got to read the bill, every piece of that bill. We used to have somebody who used to call me all the time, you voted against this, and they'd give me the title and the number of the bill. I'd say, yes, I did vote against it, and here's why. And they said, well, it doesn't say that in the 1-paragraph description. I said, well, you're looking at the original description of the original change to that bill. That's gone through 30 iterations, and here's what it does today. You got to read the last version. You've got to read every letter of it. You've got to understand the details of it. Otherwise, that's where we get messed up. We get conflicting laws, and we make mistakes on what we do. Ron first, and I think Marlena wanted to come up and give me the vote.
As far as the red flag laws, can't you report people today?
You got TDO, so you can report people today.
So why would we need red flag laws?
You really don't. If you think that Al is unstable, you can say, hey, I think Al's unstable, I think he's about to go off the deep end, I think this, I think that. And, here's an instance of what I saw him do. They'll come out, the police will have a discussion with Al. If they believe that that's true, what you accused him of, then we have the whole TDO process. There's a lot of different things, laws in place that we have today that can handle and